His greatest ambition and idea at the time was to have a university built in one, which he wanted to call Medresetu Zehra. This university would complement the Azhar University in Egypt. He was always thinking of ways to actualize his idea from plan to project. In the summer seasons, he would go up to the mountains of Bashit and Beytü Shebab for respite. One day, he told Tahir Pasha that even in July, the mountains had snow on their peaks. Tahir Pasha refused to accept such a statement, saying, "There can certainly be no snow there in July." One day, while on the mountains, Molla Said remembered this conversation and wrote to Tahir Pasha in his very first letter in Turkish, "O Pasha, there is snow on the peak of Bashit. Do not reject something you cannot see. Everything cannot be restricted to your knowledge, and that is all there is to it." Whenever Molla Said heard any news of conflict between two parties, he would immediately respond offering guidance and mediation for both sides. He would make peace between them in a short time. In fact, he was able to resolve the fallout, which even the government was unable to achieve between Şeker Ağa and chief of the Miran tribe, Mustafa Pasha. And when he turned to Mustafa Pasha to ask, "Haven't you stopped your old ways yet?" Mustafa Pasha replied, "Seyda, I will follow whatever it is that you tell me." Mustafa Pasha offered him a horse and some money. Bediüzzaman refused, saying, "Haven't you already heard? I do not accept monies from anyone. How can I ever receive the money of a tyrant like you? It seems that you have broken your oath not to go back to your old ways, which means you probably won't make it back to Cizre." Molla Said later received the news that he had died on his way to Cizre. Bediüzzaman possessed an extraordinary ability in comprehending mathematics. He was able to resolve the most complex matters in his mind very quickly. He even had a book written on the science of algebra. Whenever an issue or debate about matters requiring calculation arose before Tahir Pasha, before any skillful mathematician could solve the answer, he was able to calculate it in his mind. On many occasions, he would enter contests like this and would always win them. On one occasion, they posed the following problem. Assume there are 15 Muslims and 15 non-Muslims, and assume that the desired outcome is that a non-Muslim is picked out at random all the time. What sequence will you need to arrange them to get the desired outcome? He answered as follows. There will be 124 probable permutations to this. And he continued by saying, I can work out an even more complicated scenario than this. I can make it that there are 2,500 permutations to it. In 2 hours, he worked out the permutations, which cast 50 non-Muslims among 100 people, such that the outcome was a non-Muslim in each pick. He even worked out the sequence for a problem in which 2,500 permutations are achieved for 500 non-Muslims among a total of 1,000, and wrote it out in the form of a treatise to show Tahir Pasha. Note, that treatise was unfortunately burnt in a fire that broke out in one. In one, Bediüzzaman would read news from certain newspapers together with the governor Tahir Pasha. He would pay particular attention to the news that related to Islam. In his time in one, he had started learning about the state of the Islamic world. One day, Tahir Pasha had shown him the following terrifying news from one of the newspapers. It wrote, in the British Parliament, The Secretary of State for the colonies made a speech with the noble Qur'an in his hand and said, "So long as this Qur'an is in the hands of the Muslims, we will never be able to rule over them. We must do whatever is necessary to either take the Qur'an away from them or make them turn their backs on the Qur'an." This terrifying news had an indescribable effect on Bediüzzaman. His abilities caught fire as though struck with lightning, and his emotions and faculties had become completely alert. Upon hearing this, the Bediüzzaman, who was the recipient of amazing divine favors and qualities such as knowledge, comprehension, ikhlas, courage, and bravery, had awoken in his spirit an intense desire and drive that inspired him to declare, "I will prove and demonstrate to the world that the Qur'an is like a spiritual sun that will never fade away and can never be extinguished." Note: 65 years ago, when Said Nursi was residing in Van with the Governor Tahir Pasha, he came across a newspaper which read that the Secretary for the colonies held a Qur'an in his hand and sat in the British Parliament. "So long as this Qur'an is in the hands of the Muslims, we will never truly rule them. We must either take the Qur'an away from them or make them turn their backs on the Qur'an." This news awakened in his spirit a strong zeal and an endless endeavor. A burning desire made Bediüzzaman want to prove the miraculousness of the Qur'an to everyone, and so he made the firm decision and vowed to completely silence unbelievers. Throughout his 15 years in Van, he read from memory the more than 80 books he had entirely memorized and familiarized himself with all the necessary details of the present state of the world of Islam. One can see from his exceptional intelligence and knowledge, which he had been gifted with at such a young age, that Bediüzzaman was a scholar who was unparalleled and exceeded his counterparts. He had been granted the wisdom of the Qur'an, and his abilities possessed the firmness and drive to meet the demands of the present century, and was capable of proving and convincing the Qur'an's miraculousness to the whole world. Just as a grand tree emerging from the smallest of seeds clearly points to the power of Allah, possessing no material power whatsoever and being oppressed with his hands tied, Bediüzzaman's life and service became a seed. In the most fearsome time of history, he emerged with a spiritual, universal, and worldwide development which made a material impact and transformed the ways of thinking in Anatolia, the world of Islam, and the world at large. This demonstrated clearly to hearts and minds that this was happening through an absolute power, a divine assignment, and divine guidance. In fact, he mentioned this divine guidance in relation to the service of Iman in one of his works, and as acknowledgement of this blessing said, "At the outset of the Great War, I saw in a true vision that I was beneath the famous Mount Ararat, when suddenly that mountain exploded. It scattered all around the world, pieces the size of mountains. I saw in that terrified situation that my late mother was beside me. I said to her, 'Mother, don't be frightened. This is the command of Almighty Allah. He is all compassionate and all wise.' Suddenly, while in that state, I saw that a person of importance was commanding me, 'Announce the miraculousness of the Qur'an.' I awoke and understood that there was going to be a great explosion. Following that explosion, an upheaval, the walls protecting the Qur'an were going to be destroyed. The Qur'an was going to defend itself directly. The Qur'an was going to be attacked, and its miraculousness was going to be its steel armor. Beyond my due a person like myself was to become a candidate to proving a form of this miraculousness, and I understood that I was destined to do so. Bediüzzaman came to Istanbul in order to pursue his plan to open a university called Medresetü Zehra and began working towards establishing this madrasa either in Van or in Diyarbakır. The following are the words used by a journalist who depicted Bediüzzaman's arrival to Istanbul: a fireball of intelligence from the steep mountains of the east has risen over the horizons of Istanbul. Before leaving for Istanbul, Governor Tahir Pasha made the following comment: "You are able to defeat the scholars of the East. Do you think you can get to Istanbul and challenge the big fish in that ocean?" As soon as he arrived in Istanbul, Bediüzzaman invited the scholars for debate. The famous Istanbul scholars came to visit him in groups and found that they received correct answers to all of the questions they asked him. His purpose in all of this was to attract attention to the activities of knowledge and science in Eastern Anatolia. Otherwise, he in no way enjoyed egocentrism and at all times acted free of any degree of pomp and ostentation. He was marvelous with regard to his knowledge, bravery, memory, and intelligence, and to the same degree, if not further, he carried himself with complete ikhlas and sincerity. He never appreciated artificiality and conceit. The following was what he had written on the door of his residence in Istanbul: "Here, all problems are solved, all questions are answered, but no questions asked." Note: it is important to add here that in the last 30 to 40 years of Said Nursi's life, with regards to its service to the religion of Islam and Qur'an, the Risale-i Nur was bestowed by the extraordinary mercy and assistance of Allah. Its worldwide spiritual jihad and service of Qur'an made it clear, and he later wrote after a spiritual warning that his life was being governed by a particular order. That is, since he was destined to perform an important service to the Qur'an in laying the groundwork for it with an extraordinary divine protection and equipped with an astounding intelligence and genius, Said was being engaged and put into service under the most challenging of conditions. As it is highlighted in the introduction to his biography, it is necessary to consider this perspective when looking upon his life. In fact, before the declaration of freedom, he would inform his students and friends that a significant service of the Qur'an would emerge. "I see a nur emerging and look upon the future with great hope." With foresight, he observed the spiritual Qur'anic service of the Risale-i Nur at present and had assumed it would emerge from the world of politics. So, he spent all his efforts in Istanbul to ensure that politics was working to serve the Qur'an. Groups of scholars would come to visit him and receive answers to their questions. Providing answers to all questions with his superb ability, his persuasive and eloquent language, and his amazing behavior and manner, he soon received the admiration and appreciation of the people of knowledge. They saw him as completely deserving the title of Bediüzzaman and described him as being a rarity of creation. One of the famous chief scholars of Egypt's Azhar University, Sheikh Bahit Effendi, happened to be visiting Istanbul at that time. The scholars of Istanbul, who were no match for this blazing intelligence, had told him about Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, who had come from the steep mountains of Kurdistan. They put in a request to Sheikh Bahit to defeat him in a debate. Sheikh Bahit agreed and sought a suitable opportunity for the exchange to take place. When they sat together at the tea house after performing the Salat at the Ayasofya Mosque, Sheikh Vahid Effendi seized the opportunity to ask Bediüzzaman the following question with a group of scholars who were also present. ما تقول في حق الأوروبائية والعثمانية? That is, what do you say about Europe and the Ottomans? What are your thoughts? Rather than question his proven knowledge and extraordinary intellect, what Sheikh Vahid wanted to achieve from this question was to see the scope of Bediüzzaman's knowledge and to gain an appreciation of his view on the political state of the world. Bediüzzaman's reply to this was as follows: إن الأوروبا حاملة بالإسلامية فستلد يوما ما وإن العثمانية حاملة بالأوروبائية فستلد يوما ما. That is, Europe is pregnant with an Islamic state and will one day give birth to it. The Ottomans are pregnant to Europe and it will one day give birth to it. After hearing this response, Sheikh Vahid said, "This young man is too good to be debated. I too was of the same opinion on this matter, but to express it with such conciseness and eloquence can only be the work of Bediüzzaman." Note: both parts to this foresight actualized just as Bediüzzaman said. Within 1 or 2 years, many foreign practices contrary to the marks of Islam were put in place and systematically spread across Turkey during the constitutional period. At the same time, the favorable interest shown towards Islam and the Qur'an in Europe, particularly the news of people embracing Islam in groups from among the fortunate German nation, completely confirmed his foresight. Bediüzzaman's life in Istanbul is in some ways political. He held the view that politics was going to become the means to serve Islam, and his involvement with the political affairs was the direct result of his passion to serve Islam. He was always a supporter of freedom and never held back from expressing his opposition to the young Turks for their injustices. He told them without hesitation, "You have hurt religion and have offended the dignity of Allah and have negated the Sharia. You will face grave consequences." After freedom, he set up the Muhammadan, upon whom the blessings and peace, union with his thriving friends. In a very short time, the society grew to wider circles. In fact, after only one of Bediüzzaman's articles, 50,000 members joined the society from the Adapazarı and Izmit regions. Bediüzzaman argued that freedom should not be misinterpreted and that constitutionalism was viewed as valid by the Sharia. He would write columns in religious newspapers and deliver speeches on these topics. These articles and speeches were remarkable in terms of its eloquence and persuasiveness. The people of knowledge and politics greatly benefited from these articles and lessons by Said Nursi, in which he would declare that the national awakening that was being experienced was bearing the good news of the true dawn of happiness to rise over Anatolia and Asia. He highlighted the importance of not missing out on this opportunity and the need to urgently comply with the injunctions of the Sharia. Bediüzzaman warned that if we do not accept constitutionalism together with the freedom enjoined by the Sharia, and if we do not apply it in that way, we will lose this opportunity and it will leave its place to an absolutist authority. We include here excerpts from some of these speeches and articles. Below is part of the unscripted speech Said Nursi gave on the third day of the announcement of freedom, which he repeated in the Freedom Square in Salonika. This is a transcript of the speech that was published in newspapers. An address to freedom. O freedom of the Sharia! Your call is striking, yet so beautiful. It bears such good news that you have awoken even a Bedouin like myself, who has been asleep beneath the veils of heedlessness. If it were not for you, the general public and myself would remain prisoners. I give you the good news that you will live for eternity. I announce the good news that if you were to make the Sharia, which is life itself, the source of your life, and you were to grow in that paradise, this oppressed nation will progress 1,000 degrees further compared to former times. But only if it faithfully takes you as its guide and does not tarnish you with personal grudges and thoughts of revenge. Ya Rab, what a pleasant ending and what a beautiful revival this is, making this age depict a small sample of the truth. وَالْبَعْثُ بَعْدَ الْمَوْتِ. It is as follows. The former civilization that has been buried in all corners of Asia and Rumelia is reviving, and those chasing their interests in spreading general harm and desiring despotism have begun to say, Ya laytani kuntu turaba. After the miraculous birth of this new constitutional government, inshallah, within a year, we will manifest the mystery of نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ سَبِيًّا. This is the reward for the fasting of silence we have observed for 30 years with reliance on Allah and patience. With complete ease, it has opened the gateways to the paradise of development and civilization. The commandments of the Sharia, which is the superior starting point for the sovereignty of this nation, is like a guardian inviting us to enter into paradise. O oppressed brothers of this nation, let us go and enter it. The first door is the unity of hearts within the sphere of the Sharia. The second is the love of nation. The third is education. The fourth is human endeavor. The fifth is abandoning dissipation. I refer the others to your intelligence. Beware, O brothers of this nation. Do not kill this opportunity again through dissipation and negligence. The constitution built on the illustrious Sharia has become like Azrael and has killed all corrupt thoughts, disgraceful morals, deceptions of a Satan, and fawning acts. Beware, all brothers of this nation. Do not revive them again through wastefulness, illicit pleasures, and by acting contrary to the Sharia. This means that until recently, we were rotting away in our graves. But now, through the unity of this nation and the constitution, we have progressed to the stage of being conceived in the womb and will develop and grow. And to cover the 100-year-long progress we have missed out on with the miracle of our Prophet, we will inshallah mount the train of constitution that conforms with the Sharia with our actions, and we will mount the burak of mutual consultation enjoined by the Sharia with our intellect. By swiftly passing this terrifying desert, we will be competing head-on with civilized nations, for they are leading the way on an ox cart. By mounting vehicles like trains and air balloons, we will surpass them in an instant. Rather, through the assistance of the truth of Islam, which is the assembly of good morals, natural ability, the effulgence of Iman, and our extreme hunger facilitating digestion, we will by far outdo them, just like we had passed them before. With the sense of duty given to me as a student, and with the permission granted by freedom, I say that, O children of this nation, do not misinterpret the idea of freedom so that it is not lost and it does not suffocate us by making us drink the former putrid ideas of captivity in another cup. Note, Yes, they later forced us to swallow an extremely bitter and poisonous captivity through a much more terrifying despotism. Because freedom will establish itself and grow through application of the law, morals of the Sharia, and good conduct. Bediüzzaman. Long live the Sharia of Muhammad, upon whom be blessings and peace. Religious Newspaper, 77, 18 March 1909. The illustrious Sharia proceeds from the speech of the Pre-Eternal One, so it will continue to post-eternity. Our salvation from the disgraceful tyranny of the evil commanding nafs is through relying on Islam, by clenching onto that strong rope, by truly benefiting from the rightful freedom, and through seeking help from Iman. For it is expected that one who is truly a slave and servant of the Maker of the universe will not stoop to worshipping his creatures. Since everyone is a commander of their own world, they are charged with the greater jihad in their minor world and are assigned to embody the morals of Ahmed, upon whom be blessings and peace, and to revive the sunnah of the Prophet. O rulers of this land, if you are seeking assistance, work in conformity with the divine laws, adatullah. Otherwise, through lack of conformity, you will be denied success. The fact that all known prophets emerged from the lands of Islam and the Ottomans is a sign, an allusion of divine qadar, that the steam that will power the engine of progress for the people of this nation is religion. And the flowers in these gardens of Asia and Africa and the orchards of Rumelia will flourish with the rays of Islam. Religion is not to be sacrificed for this world, to justify the despotism which is now that matters of the Sharia used to be given as bribes. Other than harm, what else did giving up and sacrificing matters of religion produce? The disease in people's hearts is weakness in religion. Its health can only be regained by reinforcing it. The method of our community is to love itself and have enmity towards enmity. That is, to aid the love between Muslims and to defeat the soldiers of hostility. As for our method, it is to take on the morals of Ahmed, upon whom be blessings and peace, and to revive the sunnah of the Prophet, upon whom be blessings and peace. Our guide is the illustrious Sharia. Our sword is its decisive proofs, and our objective is upholding the word of Allah. Bediüzzaman.